Hello and welcome back to my channel. Penny's come to join me for this video, although she's mostly just looking out the window at birds. We're talking today about the things that we love to see in yoga classes. What are the big green flags? I made a video maybe last year that looked at some red flags, some of the things that are quite shocking that they even happen in yoga classes, but unfortunately they do. So I'm really excited to go into the green flags, into the really positive stuff. And we're starting with teaching, not performing. So I love going to classes where I can see that the teacher is really focused on teaching the postures, the breath work, the meditation in a clear way that is accessible, that allows everyone to understand and join in, where the teaching is not just a performance. Very occasionally you might have come across a class like this where it feels like you as the sort of student in the class, and I've certainly been to ones where I've felt this way, you feel like you're just trying to keep up with what the teacher is doing, and that it's the teacher is just performing the postures and you're just trying to keep up. And for some people that works. For me, I feel like I'm just being a bit left out of the class somehow. So I love it when teachers can give really detailed and really clear instructions that not only keep us all on track of what we're doing, but also potentially offer a variety of levels, a kind of layering of information, so that those who are coming to the class as complete beginners or sort of more beginner level can understand what they're supposed to do and do a version of it that suits them. But a sign of a really great teacher is when they can give the information in enough layering and detail so that those of us who are a bit more practiced also have ways of understanding how to push ourselves in the poses a little bit more, or to add something on that adds an extra level of challenge or focus. So this is something I try and do in my teaching, and as we go through the 5 of these, it will become clear that this video is kind of a reminder from me to me about what's really important to include in my classes. And I think for all of us who teach yoga, and I'm sure that some of you watching are yoga teachers too, or maybe yoga teachers in training, it's important that we keep learning and re-evaluating how we put together our classes, what we're doing well, where there might be room for improvement. So that's number 1 for me, teaching, not performing. My second green flag is encouraging and demonstrating the use of props. There can be, in yoga classes, maybe you relate to this feeling, a bit of like reluctance to use things like the bricks, straps, bolsters, blankets to enhance the yoga postures. I think that stems from a couple of things. For one, there can be a feeling of, I don't want to have to use something to support me. I want to be able to do it all myself. Or perhaps a feeling of, if I have to use bricks in this pose, then that makes me not as good at yoga as someone else who doesn't need to use the bricks. But I think another big reason why people resist using the props is just that they simply don't know how to use them. They haven't had it demonstrated. So for example, if we're coming into child's pose, and if I were a complete beginner or fairly new to yoga and the teacher says, and now coming into child's pose, you can use a brick if you want to, I wouldn't have a clue, probably, how to use that brick. I wouldn't know what it means unless I've had it more clearly demonstrated or shown to me. So I love it when teachers, and again, I try my hardest to do this in classes too, when teachers demonstrate how to use the props and give options for using them. And another kind of layer on top of that that can be really helpful is when the teachers ask everyone in the class to start with the version that includes the prop. Hello. So for example, with that child's pose again, the instructor could have the brick and say, right, everyone grab your brick, bring it under your forehead, see what this feels like. And then if you don't feel like you need it, or you just want to bring your head all the way down to the mat, you could take the brick away. And in that case, it just brings everyone onto a sort of level playing field. Number 3 is something I talk about quite regularly on this channel, which is having a deep respect for the practice of yoga. The best yoga teachers, sorry, Penny's jumped off my lap. The best yoga teachers that I have ever known personally are those who manage to weave the philosophy and the teachings of yoga really effectively and carefully into the classes that they teach, so that it becomes more than just a physical yoga posture practice. It becomes a reflection, a practice of self-inquiry, self-study, and the deeper wisdom of yoga is not being lost. And that is a really hard thing to do, by the way, as a yoga instructor and as someone who leads a yoga teacher training course. This is something we're always talking about, how we can maintain the principles of yoga in the classes that we're teaching in a considered and careful and respectful, most importantly, way. Number 4, Shavasana is unrushed. I'm really curious to know how you feel about Shavasana, about corpse pose, laying down at the end of the class, coming to stillness. It kind of divides people. Some people love it and that's really what they're going to class for. Other people find it very challenging to be still without distraction and trying to calm and quieten their minds. And really it is intended to be a bit of a challenge, a difficult pose, because we are trying to quieten the mind. We're trying to come to a state of meditation really when we rest in Shavasana. But that is the whole point of yoga. Yoga is the stilling of the fluctuations of the mind, as it says in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. That is the whole point. That's what we're there for, is learning how to quieten the mind, how to come to a state of peace and clarity, and to be still with ourselves. And so for me, the whole yoga class, every class I go to, every yoga practice that I do, it's all leading to Shavasana. That's like the dessert at the end of a good meal. It's the like delicious part at the end that I'm always looking forward to. So the posture practice, for example, is a way of releasing tension from the physical body. The breath work is a way of... Sorry, that was Penny doing a big sneeze. I don't know if you heard that. There she goes again. The posture practice is about sort of purifying the body. The breath work practice is about purifying the mind and the soul, so that when we then come to lay down at the end of class, we are perfectly kind of warmed up and prepared physically and mentally for stillness. We should be able to lay down without any discomfort in the body because we've done all of those stretches, and we should be able to lay down with a sense of clarity in the mind because of the breath work, the focus, the meditation element of the class that's happened already. So I'm saying should there, and maybe that's not the right word. We are hoping that we will get to that stage so that when we come to Shavasana, it feels easy or relatively easy to be in stillness and to give the mind a bit of time to settle. The reality is it's not always that easy. It can be a really, really challenging practice, but it's a practice. It does take time, patience, dedication to get to a place where you can enjoy Shavasana and perhaps feel yourself moving into a calmer, meditative state. So when Shavasana is rushed in a class, it just feels like you've been cheated, robbed of that precious time of stillness at the end. So I love when I go to a class where I feel like I get the full experience of Shavasana. And my 5th and final green flag for this video is a clear understanding of bodies. So yoga is a practice where we use our bodies, where we move through these postures. It's really important that we're doing these safely and correctly. Unfortunately, because yoga is quite an unregulated industry, or completely unregulated to be honest, technically you don't even have to have a yoga qualification to teach classes, but that's a whole conversation for another day. But even those of us who have been through yoga teacher training qualifications, and we have to take at least one exam in anatomy and physiology, which is pretty intensive, even with all of that knowledge, we're still not, trained physicians. We don't have all the information about bodies. And so it's important that as a yoga instructor, or really any instructor of any kind of fitness classes, movement practices, that we continue our education in making sure that what we're teaching is really safe, effective, and correct. The difficult thing with yoga is that there have been in the past these theories about what's safe or not safe to do for certain types of people, and some of those myths that are not based in science have proliferated. The big one that comes up quite often that you may have come across as well is about inversions, so going upside down while menstruating. So the myth is that you're not supposed to go upside down while menstruating, and there is absolutely no research to support that. In fact, the research supports the opposite. It's perfectly safe to go upside down during menstruation if you want to. The only reason you might not want to is just so you might not feel totally comfortable doing all the postures that you normally do during that time. And that's a personal choice, but there's nothing unsafe about it. And so as yoga instructors, we have to be very careful about when we hear things like that, going away, doing our research, making sure that we are teaching things factually. That what we're teaching is based in research, in science, in modern understanding of anatomy and physiology. So when I see a yoga teacher who I think has a very clear grasp of what's safe for our bodies to do, when they're using correct anatomical language, when they can give really clear options for how to adapt poses if you have an injury in a certain place or a condition, that again is just a big like ding 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 green flag. Makes me so happy to see when there are yoga teachers who have that deep understanding and have clearly taken the time to keep learning, keep growing as an instructor when it comes to anatomy and physiology. I would love to know what your green flags or maybe red flags are when it comes to yoga classes, whether you disagree with me on some of these things, because you may do. I did make a video a while back looking at the red flags. There were some really shocking ones, so I'll put a link to that in the description box below if you want to check it out. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already subscribed to this channel, I would love it if you would think about subscribing and joining our little growing community. From looking at my channel analytics, I know that only about 30% of you guys who are watching regularly are actually subscribed to this channel, and it would be so cool to be able to bump that number up a little bit. It also really helps the growth of this channel if you like the videos, if you leave me a comment to tell me what you think. All of these things let the YouTube algorithm know that you're enjoying what you're seeing, that this content is valuable, and YouTube will then push it out to more people and share the word around, which would be excellent. Thank you again so much for watching, and I'll see you in another video very soon.